People think cleaners are invisible. They think when you wear gloves and carry a mop, your ears stop working. Your mind shuts off. Your life story ends. That belief is the reason this story exists. Because if they had paid attention, even once, they would have seen me coming. I started cleaning the executive floor of Sterling Heights Financial 2 years ago. Top floor. Glass walls. Marble floors so polished they reflected people's egos back at them. I worked nights at first, then mornings, then wherever they needed someone quiet. I wore the Navy uniform, hair tied back, no makeup, no jewelry. I learned quickly that the less you stand out, the more people reveal. The first time they laughed at me, I was on my knees scrubbing coffee stains outside the boardroom. One of the executives stepped over my bucket and said, "Careful, wouldn't want the cleaner slowing us down." They laughed. Not cruel laughter. Casual laughter. The kind that doesn't even register as mean because it's so normal to them. That was my first lesson. Cruelty doesn't always shout. Sometimes it jokes. They assumed I was uneducated, unambitious, temporary. They were wrong. I had an MBA in finance, top of my class. I had once sat in rooms just like theirs, before life collapsed all at once. My father died suddenly. Debt followed, medical bills, a mother who couldn't work anymore, a younger brother still in school. Dreams don't survive emergencies. So I took the job that paid weekly. The job no one asked questions about, and I told myself it was temporary. But then something interesting happened. I started listening. Every Thursday morning, the board met at 9. Every Thursday morning at 8:30, I cleaned the boardroom. I wiped fingerprints off screens, showing numbers most people would never touch. I emptied trash bins filled with shredded drafts. I straightened chairs while men argued about millions. They talked freely. They assumed silence meant stupidity. They talked about cutting departments, about hiding losses, about creative accounting. One day, the CEO laughed and said, "By the time anyone notices, we'll be gone." Everyone laughed. I memorized that sentence. They never learned my name. They called me cleaner, girl, hey you. Once, a senior manager looked at me and said, "You must love this job. No pressure, no thinking." I smiled. Silence is easier than explaining. The real humiliation came at the annual company dinner. They let a few cleaning staff help serve because someone called in sick. I carried trays between chandeliers and confidence. That's when a woman snapped her fingers at me. "Hey, cleaner?" I stopped. "Yes?" I said. She looked me up and down and laughed. "Do you people even understand what we do here?" The table laughed. Another man added, "Hey, as long as she doesn't spill anything, she's doing great." The CEO saw us and smirked. "If she messes up, we replace her. Plenty more where she came from." They raised their glasses to being irreplaceable. I clinked their glasses. And something inside me went very, very quiet. People think anger explodes. Mine sharpened. After that night, I stopped seeing myself as an employee. I became a witness. I noticed which executives stayed late, which ones panicked before audits, which numbers changed at the last minute. I noticed sticky notes with passwords, unlocked screens, printed documents tossed without shredding. They never noticed me noticing. That was their biggest mistake. 3 weeks later, I found the envelope. Brown. Unmarked. Tossed into the trash like nothing. Inside were contracts, approvals, handwritten notes saying, "Push before audit." My hands didn't shake. I took it home. I spread the papers across my kitchen table, a cheap table under a flickering bulb. And for the first time since my life fell apart, I smiled, because this wasn't arrogance anymore. It was evidence. I made one phone call, a number saved years ago. "I need advice," I said. The voice on the other end paused, then said, "If you're calling me, it's already serious." "Yes," I said. "It is." The next morning I went back to work. Same uniform, same mop, same bowed head. The CEO stepped over my bucket again. "Careful," he said. "Wouldn't want you getting ideas." I looked up at him for the first time, and I smiled. "Oh," I said quietly. "I already have." They thought this story was about a cleaner. They were wrong. This was always about what happens when people mistake silence for weakness. And this was only the beginning. After I found the envelope, I stopped wondering if something was wrong at Sterling Heights Financial. I started asking how deep it went. I still showed up every morning at the same time, still wore the same uniform, still kept my head down. But inside I was wide awake. People don't understand how much power there is in being underestimated. When no one sees you as a threat, they don't guard themselves. That's when truth leaks out. I began mapping everything. Who signed what? Who approved which numbers? Who panicked when audits were mentioned? I memorized voices the way other people memorize faces. The CFO cleared his throat whenever he lied. The CEO tapped his pen when something was rushed. One executive always said temporary adjustment when he meant permanent manipulation. They didn't speak in code. They spoke in arrogance. One morning, I was emptying trash in the CFO's office when he walked in unexpectedly. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. "Oh," he said. "Didn't see you there." I lowered my eyes. He kept talking on the phone anyway. Yes, push it through before Friday," he said. "No, compliance doesn't need to see everything." He laughed. "They don't even know what to look for." I did. At home, I stopped watching TV, stopped scrolling my phone. Every night, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and recreated what I heard. Numbers, timelines, patterns. They thought they were hiding things. They weren't. They were just hiding them from the wrong people. The call I made that night changed everything. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was quiet. "I have documents," I said, "and I have access." The voice on the other end went silent. "How much access?" they asked. "Enough," I said. "More every day." Another pause. Then, "Do nothing yet." That's when I knew this was real. The next week, the company announced a surprise internal review. Everyone acted calm. No one was. Executives stopped joking. Meetings ran longer. Doors closed more often. I cleaned faster. Moved quieter. Fear makes people sloppy. One afternoon, I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. Two senior managers whispering in the hallway. "If this goes wrong, we blame finance." "No, we blame operations." "What about the cleaner?" They laughed. "She doesn't even know where she is." I memorized their names. Then came the first mistake. The CEO sent an email. Not to me, but where I could see it. Subject line, "Final adjustments, do not forward." They always write that, as if words can stop consequences. That night, I didn't sleep. I reviewed everything one last time. Not emotionally, professionally. Because revenge isn't rage, it's precision. I opened a new bank account under a name no one at Sterling knew. I transferred money that wasn't mine anymore. Because legally, it never had been. They had signed it away months ago. They just hadn't read the fine print. The next morning, something small happened. Very small. A delayed payment, a rejected transfer, a quiet freeze. Just enough to cause confusion, not enough to cause panic. Yet, I watched the CFO argue with accounting. I watched the CEO snap at assistants. I watched executives blame each other. And I kept cleaning. Someone finally noticed. "Hey," a manager said sharply. "Why are you always around?" I looked at him calmly. The day they started watching me back. The first sign something had changed was the silence. Not the normal kind, The dangerous kind. No laughter in the hallways, no bragging in the boardroom, just low voices and closed doors. Fear has a sound, and I could hear it. The audit notice went out on a Tuesday morning. Subject line: Internal Financial Review. Immediate effect. People stared at their screens longer than usual. Some pretended not to read it. Others reread it 3 times. I kept cleaning. The CFO started arriving early. The CEO stayed late. Executives who once joked about numbers suddenly argued over decimals. I listened. I always listened. Someone followed me for the first time that week. Not obvious, not clumsy, but I noticed. When you've lived invisible long enough, you recognize attention immediately. I turned a corner. So did he. I stopped to adjust my cart. He pretended to check his phone. I smiled to myself. Too late. That afternoon, security changed protocols. Badges reactivated. Doors locked earlier. Trash bins emptied by management. They were trying to contain something. They just didn't know what. I found the second envelope by accident. Or at least, that's what they would think. Same handwriting. Same urgency. Different names. Bigger numbers. This one didn't go on my kitchen table. This one went straight into the system. The call came that night. They're panicking, the voice said. They should, I replied. You're no longer protected by obscurity. I never was, I said. They just assumed I was. A pause. Tomorrow changes everything. The next morning, HR called me in. I knew they would. When people can't attack facts, they attack access. You've been reported for loitering, the woman said stiffly. Loitering? I repeated calmly. Lingering near executive offices. I nodded slowly. I clean executive offices, I said. She didn't like that answer. By noon, rumors were everywhere. Someone was leaking information. Someone was sabotaging transfers. Someone was watching. They looked at each other. Then, finally, they looked at me. The CEO stopped me in the hallway. You, he said. I turned. How long have you worked here? 2 years, I said. He studied my face, searching for something. You seem observant. I smiled politely. It's my job, I said. He didn't smile back. That afternoon, compliance arrived. External, unannounced. No smiles, no handshakes. Executives straightened their jackets, and for the first time, they didn't look powerful. They looked exposed. I cleaned the boardroom while auditors reviewed files inside. One of them dropped a document. I picked it up. He glanced at me, surprised. Thank you, he said. You're welcome, I replied. He paused. You know, he said quietly, people underestimate cleaners. I met his eyes. Yes, I said. They do. By evening, 3 executives were escorted out. No announcements, no applause, just boxes, just silence. The CEO called an emergency meeting. Only executives. The cleaner wasn't invited. That was fine. I already knew the outcome. My phone buzzed. Tomorrow, board vote. I exhaled slowly. This was the moment before impact. The moment when power shifts hands. They thought this was about revenge. They were wrong. Revenge is emotional. This was inevitable. That night, I folded my uniform neatly. I washed my gloves. I placed them carefully on the table. Because tomorrow, I wouldn't need them anymore. They mocked me for being a cleaner. Tomorrow, they would learn what I really cleaned up. The boardroom was full. The air felt heavy. Executives straightened, papers in hand, trying to look confident. But I knew their confidence was fragile. I walked in last. Uniform replaced with a crisp black suit. Hair tied back neatly. Hands empty. Eyes wide open. They barely noticed me. They thought it was still the cleaner who listened. They were about to find out they were wrong. The chairman spoke first. Let's begin. Victoria stood at the head of the table, smiling as if she still controlled the room. She didn't notice the way her assistant avoided her gaze. She didn't notice the subtle tension in the air. She didn't notice me. Victoria launched into her presentation, slides perfect, voice smooth. She spoke of projections, acquisitions, growth. Numbers she barely understood, strategies she didn't test. I listened, as always. Then the chairman looked at me. "Ms. Evans," he said, calm, deliberate. "Would you like to speak?" Victoria's smile faltered, her eyes narrowed. I stood, slowly, confidently. "I've reviewed the recent financial movements," I began, voice steady. "I've cross-checked approvals, transfers, and compliance logs." The room stiffened. Executives shifted uncomfortably. Victoria's hand trembled slightly as she held her pointer. "Several transactions were processed without proper authorization," I continued. "Conditional capital clauses were breached. Governance protocols were ignored. And these errors have immediate consequences." Victoria froze. "The capital associated with Asia acquisitions has been temporarily frozen," I said, "pending board review." Gasps, whispers, sweat forming on foreheads. Victoria pointed at me. "You..." I ignored her. She was already losing control. The chairman's voice cut through. "Victoria Evans, effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as CFO, pending investigation." Victoria's jaw dropped. Her fingers gripped the table. Her empire of confidence shattered in seconds. She looked at me, eyes wide, fierce, humiliated. "You can't do this," she cried. "This is my company." I smiled softly. "No," I said, calm, clear. "This is your accountability." Executives whispered. The CEO sank into his chair. They all finally understood. I wasn't just the cleaner. I had always been more. I had listened. I had memorized. I had waited. Victoria sank to her chair. She didn't fight anymore. The board didn't argue. The room had shifted. I stood quietly, not triumphant, not angry, just present. A week later, I accepted the position offered by the board. Black suit, chair at the head of the table. No speeches, no theatrics, only authority. The office smelled like polished floors, confidence, and quiet satisfaction. The executives who had laughed at me before now deferred. The room was mine, not because I destroyed anyone, but because I had been prepared while they assumed I wasn't paying attention. Months later, I saw Victoria in passing. Smaller office, quieter life,